This episode is sponsored by Visual Media. Are you an entrepreneur or a small business looking to take your brand to the next level? Then Visual Media is the service for you. Visual Media is a video production company who specializes in creating high quality visual content for social media, websites, and online courses. Head over to Visual Media on Instagram and drop Resilience in their DM to get started. That's VZUALMEDIA _ to get started. What's up, everyone? This is Resilience in Action with Erin Brown, the number one podcast for anyone looking to have a greater human experience. What's going on, everyone? It's another episode of Resilience in Action with Erin Brown, and today our guest is Dr. Davis McAlister. Dr. McAlister, thank you so much for spending some time with us today.
Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself.
So, kind of going along the theme of the resilience and action, this is kind of the story that I have that I share with people is that, I grew up in the 80s. I was a latchkey kid. Only people in the 80s really know what that means. But, it just meant that your parents worked from, can to can't, and, you were expected to kind of take care of yourself, let yourself in when you got home from school. We all wore keys around our necks to get in the house and everything else. And, but that lends itself to becoming pretty resilient and resourceful and trying to figure things out on your own and, just trying to find a way to overcome no matter what the obstacles, because you didn't have anybody else to ask or to bounce things off of. And as I got into high school, that started to kind of become a problem, especially in my relationship with my parents. My parents, they worked all the time. I had no doubt that they loved me, but I had no relationship with them. And then we got, it started kind of rolling along, and things just kept getting more and more heated while I was in high school. And eventually my dad just said, get out and kicked me out. And I spent about 3.5 months on the streets, literally on the streets, sleeping wherever I could and scrounging up food wherever I could. I did have a part-time job at a grocery store, so that at least gave me a place to be when I wasn't going to classes or whatever. And my escape was joining the Army. So I went into the Army and did that for 8 years. And, when I went and talked to the recruiter, it was, we'll give you a place to sleep, food to eat, pay you, clothes to wear, just do what we need you to do. And that was better than what I had going on at the time. And in all honesty, I don't know where I would have ended up if I hadn't done that. So, but I worked in military intelligence, worked my way up through the ranks and kind of figured out who I was and how to goal set and how the self-discipline that goes along with it and all those things. And then made the decision to get out, go to school, I went to school at Mississippi State, finished my bachelor's degree in 2.5 years.
Wow.
I just went to school straight through all year long and didn't take breaks. Ended up walking on. My last couple of years in the service, I started becoming a competitive power lifter and was pretty successful. Still doing that when I started going to undergrad, and ended up my organic chemistry lab partner and I went and worked out one day. He was like, dude, you're like really strong. You need to come out and come play football. And of course I'm at a D1 school. And I was like, there's no way they're going to let me come play football. And he said, no, we actually have a walk-on tryout coming up. And so I went to the walk-on tryout and I was one of a couple guys that they kept. And I was 25, almost 26 years old at the time. And, but, coming straight out of the military, going right onto a college campus, there were some adjustments there. I would probably recommend, people coming out of the military to give themselves a little bit more adaptation time going from military to civilian world. I went from actually being in a non-declared war zone area at that time to being on a college campus within a month and a half. And
what was that like? I'm going to pause right there because that's very interesting. What was your mindset like?
I mean, I was still, I mean, it, I was used to being in an environment where, there's consequences of everything that you did. There was accountability. If you made a bad decision, it could cost somebody their life. And so, and having seen all the things that I had seen around the world, and I traveled the world, uh, and got to do all these high speed, high level things, and then go to sit on a college campus, and I was with a bunch of 18, 19, 20-year-old kids that all they've known is mom and daddy's house,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm certain that there was probably some that had some hard luck stories that they were there, and had to work their way there, but that wasn't the majority of the people on the campus.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was, for lack of better terms, it caused a lot of frustration, a lot of anger on my side of it. Just trying to cope with that and deal with that, because it was like everybody got on my nerves.
Mm.
Everybody complained about something. Like, why are you complaining about that? That's the biggest thing you have to worry about today. And so, um, it was tough to start with. And then when I had the opportunity to actually walk on and play football, and I'll be honest with you, I never cared if I ever got to play. Um, for me, it was an outlet. I, you know, I could get out there and I could go hit people and not get in trouble for it, and so it kind of became an outlet. Um, and that was a little bit of my coping mechanism going in, knowing what I know now. I should have given myself more transition time and a little bit more time to adapt and back into the civilian world, and because I mean, kids would do stuff and there was no accountability, there was no recourse. It was driving me crazy, and I tried living in the dorms for a little while. That didn't go well.
Yeah, I can
Um,
imagine.
yeah. So I ended up getting an apartment, and it wasn't a great part of town, but it was an apartment, and it was it was off campus.
Mhm.
I can tell you, I had a 2 bedroom apartment with a full kitchen and full bath, and I was paying $250 a month. And
Okay. Definitely not the best part of town.
no, but it was one of those things. Nobody messed with me. Everybody left me alone. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, it really forced me to have to integrate back into civilian society a whole lot faster, and really kind of come to grips with what is okay, what is not okay. What in the military can carry over, what cannot. What do I have to leave back on? Back on the post when I left, and trying to sort through all that as I was going through undergrad. But my main thing was I was focused on school most of the time.
Mhm.
I was taking 20, anywhere from 20 to 25 hours a semester, and playing football.
That's full
And
full time.
yes, yeah,
Full time on
yeah,
top of football.
yes.
Did you have did you have any you time? Did you have any time just to sit with yourself?
No, and I didn't want it.
Mm,
Yeah, I didn't want it.
yeah.
It's one of those things too. When you're coming out of the military, when you've been exposed to certain things, and there's a little bit of a coping and adaptation that needs to take place. And
Mhm.
sometimes that alone time is not good. It's better to keep yourself busy. It's better to keep yourself occupied. So for me, actually going and playing football and getting to work out and do all those things, that was my time.
Got
Um, and then I would have my time that I would focus on study. My biggest thing was just keeping myself busy all the time.
Mhm.
But that's what I was also used to.
Mm,
You join in the military. They're not kidding when say most people do more. We do more before 9 o'clock than most people do their entire days, because
yeah.
we're up early and we're cranking it out. And, we already got our PT in. We've already started working, and whatever our job assignments are, that type of thing. And so you're used to staying busy and on the go, and so that was just what I was used to. So, going to school, I was all right. Mission is get my degree. Let's get it done and get it done quick. So
So you got your degree, your bachelor's in 2 years.
2.5 years. Yep.
2.5 years.
Yep.
Goodness gracious. Um, would you change anything about that specific? Would you have slowed down, or would you keep everything the same?
I think for that time period, I would have kept it the same.
Okay.
Yeah, that time period, I would have kept it the same. Um, there's definitely some things, after that, part of all that transition, going from being kicked out of my house to going into the military and then going to school, you adopt a persistent survival mode, and it's a survival mindset. So you constantly feel like you have to fight everything,
Mm.
and it was still that same mindset going through school. I'm having to, okay, this is my next battle. My next battle is to get this degree done. Let's see how fast I can get it done. And I kept straight A's all the way through school, and did very well. And then while I was in school, I got introduced to chiropractic. When I initially got out, I didn't know what I wanted to major in. I had a language background. That was part of my job in the military. I had to learn languages, and so I learned a couple languages. And I thought, okay, well, maybe international business might be a possibility. And I started taking the business classes, and I had to take a political science class, and I'm like, I hate this, and, and this is not me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I went to go see my uncle that lived in San Antonio, and he took me to a chiropractor for the first time, and he was like, "I'm going to take you to see my chiropractor." And, I was beat up after 8 years in the military and then playing college football, and
Yeah.
I was pretty tore up. And he said, "I'm going to take you to my chiropractor." And I'm like, "What's a chiropractor?" And so he took me to his, and after that first visit, that was the best I had felt in years.
Mm.
I got out and ran that night. That was the best run that I had. I didn't hurt all over when I was running, and I could actually take a deep breath while I was running. And I was like, you know what? This is something I think I can do. I can help people. I could get a doctorate degree, and I don't necessarily have to work outside, which is funny in the long run, because I ended up having a stint where I was coaching, um, and in the state of Texas. Coaching football in the state of Texas is, when you hit those two a days, you get 100 plus degree a day. So I ended up doing that anyway. But so I changed my major, went to pre-med, and to get all my prerequisites done for chiropractic school. Went ahead and finished my degree. Um, I was pushing through. I had a general science degree. If I had stayed at Mississippi State probably a year longer, I would have finished with more than one degree, as
Gotcha.
fast as I was cranking through things out. But it didn't make sense to me to have more than one bachelor's degree at the time. I wanted to go ahead and get to my doctorate program, and so that's what I did and pushed through. Moved to Dallas, enrolled at Parker University to get my chiropractic degree, and did that. Met my wife while I was in school,
Okay.
and we it was funny. She and I met. I started working for another doctor, just doing some work around his office and going out and helping with marketing and that type of thing. I was just trying to learn the business side of it, so I'd gone to work for a doctor. And we were out at an event, and he decided to sign up for a booth out at this trade show, like flea market type deal. They call it McKinney Trade Days. And I had gone out with him, and my now wife was with her parents. She didn't even want to go that day. Her parents drug her out, made her come,
Mm-hmm.
and she came up and talked to me, and I've always had a little bit of a kind of a baby face, and so I was wearing a ball cap, so she couldn't see I was losing my hair already. But her mom was like, "You ought to go talk to him." She goes, "I am not looking for another child to raise," because she had two boys from a previous marriage, and what she didn't know is I was 28, almost 29 years old at the time, and so we ended up, I gave her my card and just said, well, if you decide that you want to come get care or whatever, here's my card. And she
Mm-hmm.
ended up calling me about a week later, and I was down in San Antonio visiting some family and playing golf, and we ended up talking on the phone, and came back a week later, went on our first date, and we've been together ever since. So
That's beautiful.
yeah.
You never
I,
really know.
yeah, and it's one of those things too. Our first date was more like a cross interrogation, because she grew up, her entire family was military and police. Her dad was a police investigator in San Angelo, Texas, um, And so she knew how to fire questions, and we pretty much knew on that first date this is either going to work or it's not, right at the end of
Yeah.
that first date, because we both had already gone through our share of bad relationships and everything. And it was pretty much a 16-hour date, and it was just one big long cross interrogation, and decided at the end of that date, all right, we're staying together. we, we got we met in August and got married in December. So
Wow.
yeah, so every parent's nightmare when they fortunately, we were full grown adults at the time, and we've been together for 20 years. So
20 years. Congratulations on
I
that.
think.
Absolutely. Absolutely. What has one of the lessons that you've learned about yourself while being married for the last 20 years? As a man, it can be difficult to openly talk about your feelings and problems you may be facing in life. For decades, society has told you to man up and that men don't cry. But we know that bottling those emotions can have severe consequences. That's why RJ Zimmerman created a free men Zoom group that meets once a month, a judgment-free zone where you can find support and resources to help you through life. Visit www.untappedkeg.com to sign up.
This is one of the things that I thought I had patience, and when you pray for patience, be careful what you pray for, because God will send it to you. And between having kids, we have 5 children, and the two older boys were from her previous marriage. We don't use the term step in our house. They've never called me stepdad. I've always been dad. Was with them when they were 7 and 4, when my wife and I got married, and it's always been dad. And that was by their own choice. It wasn't anything I asked for. That was their decision. I wanted it to be their decision. And when they both turned 18, they both took my name. Their biological dad would not sign off for me to adopt them. So when they turned 18, they made the decision and filed the paperwork and legally changed their name. So, but I had a lot of growing I had to do. And in all honesty, probably one of the biggest things that I learned in 20 years of marriage is everything I had to unlearn. I had a lot to unlearn.
Yeah.
Based off of the way I grew up. And I mean, because you're always going to resort back to what you know, whether you intend or not. We can resolve. I'm never going to raise it. I'm never going to raise my kids that way. I'm never going to treat my spouse that way. But if you don't replace it with something, you're going to resort back to what you know.
Yep.
And and mine was a lack of patience. And very easily disconnected. I could very easily disconnect because that's what I had to do growing up.
Of course.
That was my survival instinct. Was when things got tough, disconnect, and not intentionally having to be intentional about not disconnecting when things got tough. That's probably one of the toughest things that I had to overcome. When things get tough, you can't just walk out the door. That doesn't work. You can't run from everything. You got to stay. You got to stand there and deal with it. And anything else in my life, that was my mindset. I could do that easily. But when it came to the relationship side of it, I struggled.
Yeah.
And so it took some time. And thank God my wife is more patient than I am, because and I had to have somebody that was pretty hard headed. We're both very type A personalities, and I had to have a very strong personality to be able to, to deal with me. So,
yeah. How did you unlearn those defense mechanisms, and are you still in the process of unlearning to this day?
No, I mean, it's about creating habits. So
Mhm.
you have to break a habit and you have to create a habit.
Yeah.
And if you read, the general guidelines, it takes 30 days to break a habit, it takes 30 days to create a new habit. And it's really hard to do both at the same time. So really, when you're trying to establish a new habit, you're looking at a minimum of at least 60 days of being conscious about something and not doing it.
Mhm.
The other thing too is also recognizing the warning signs when you're kind of getting to that point, and you're frustrated, and um, recognizing what that sign is and having an effective communication system, and being okay with my wife being able to tell me, look, you're getting amped up, you need to take a deep breath and just relax, and we can deal with this, we can talk through this, just um, and being able to recognize those warning signs. It also helps, getting older, maturity, kicking
Yeah.
in, and you know, age kind of mellows you out a little bit. But my wife both had kind of fiery personalities too when we first, it's funny. There were times that when we compared notes, even growing up, there were periods, when my wife and I were in high school. She was from Texas and I was from Mississippi, but her dad was traveling with the Navy, and at one point in time, we were within about 3 hours of each other. And there was several times throughout our lives that we were near proximity to each other, but it wasn't time for us to meet yet.
Mhm.
And and based off of what I knew about her personality, I knew my personality. There was no way it was going to work out
Yeah, I was
for
about to say it wasn't. It happened at the time it was supposed to happen because you had to become who you were going to be. She had to become who she was going to be, and
Mhm.
you both had to figure out how to navigate that journey together.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yep, absolutely.
that's beautiful. That's wow. 20 years.
Hmm.
And just I'm sure you've had your share of ups and downs and twists and
Yeah,
turns and
yeah.
is there anything that you would have done differently in your relationship wise?
Yeah. I mean, there's things that I wish I could go back and undo. I mean, you're going to make mistakes. I've
Sure.
never cheated on my wife, nothing along those lines. But
Mhm.
sometimes you say something that you shouldn't have said.
Yeah.
Um, or you know, you turn around and took the wrong attitude about something that you shouldn't have. Um, and that's one of the things that we've tried really hard to teach our children is that um, this is just like firing a gun. Once that bullet leaves the gun, you can't take it back.
Hmm.
Once you allow those words to leave your mouth, you can't bring it back. You know, and you have to be careful. We've also used the analogy. We gave them a clean piece of paper and told them to wad that piece of paper up. Now I want you to try to flatten it back out, smooth it back out. And they're like, and we'll ask them, said, does it look like it did before? And they were like, well, no. I said, were you able to get it flat again? Well, yeah, kind of, but it's now wrinkled. I said, that's what happens when you use the wrong words. You're going to do damage to people. You can apologize. You can try to straighten it back out, but the damage is still done.
Hmm.
And so you have to really learn to pick your words, your words wisely, and take that minute to step back. And that was one of the things that I really had to learn is taking that step back, taking a deep breath, and thinking about what I said before I said it,
Hmm.
and thinking about how it was going to come out before I said it. You have all these different personality types. There's if you read, I'm trying to remember his name. He had the seven love languages book, but everybody's got a personality type and everybody speaks through their personality type.
Yeah.
Certain personality types, which mine being one of them, is that you tend to act first, then think, and then listen.
Mm.
And so I had to consciously change that order to be able to communicate better with my wife, because she was a completely different personality type. And we're going to hear things through a certain filter. This is why, I'd spend a time teaching and coaching. I can stand in front of a classroom full of people, and I can make one statement and I could get 30 different interpretations of what I said based off of
Mm-hmm.
how they process and how they filter information coming in.
Yeah.
And taking the time to learn that. My wife and I went through a class and uh, learned what those different languages were and how people process and filter. It made me a better parent. It made me a better spouse, and also it made me a better teacher and coach and doctor and all these things, and being able to be conscious of how people process information and learning how to recognize their personality type and be able to speak through their filter, because we hear things not as they are, but we hear things as we are, and
Mm-hmm.
you have to know what the we is, for each individual.
Absolutely. I always say that we are living in our own personal realities,
Hmm.
and our lived experiences kind of shape how we see, how
Hmm.
we hear the world.
Yep.
Like you said, you could say one thing and it's 30 different interpretations because
Hmm.
of their respective reality.
Yeah.
And I think it's so amazing. And I think we're moving into a time where that consciousness is becoming more of the norm.
Hmm.
And I love to see it
Yeah.
because we're going to continue to misinterpret. We're going to continue to butt heads on certain topics, certain things, because we're not understanding that we're viewing things from our perspective
Yeah.
and no one else's.
Yeah.
And then now we have to figure out how to break down our perspective to let someone else in and let them see it.
Yeah.
That's difficult
Yeah.
sometimes,
It is.
especially if the topic, whatever the thing that you're talking about, is a difficult
Mhm.
conversation. It's
It
a
can be. And sometimes with some of those conversations, it may be one of those things that you never see eye to eye.
mm-hmm,
Uh, and
absolutely.
and sometimes you have to agree to disagree.
Mm-hmm.
And so long as, but I feel like so long as there's respectful language going back and forth,
Yes.
that's what's important. We can agree to disagree on something. We can be on opposing sides of something, but we've got to be able to sit down and be able to talk it through. And if the conclusion is that, if it's just better that we don't talk to each other, then that's okay. I'm okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
But let's come to a good solid understanding without that becoming a conflict.
Absolutely, absolutely. That respect is a big key
Mhm.
that that gets lost on people sometimes.
Yeah.
We can have a disagreement, we can have a conversation, whatever the case may be.
Mhm.
We don't have to try to change each other's minds. I think it's more important to say what you need to say, let them say what they need to say, and then decipher whatever that outcome is what you're looking for.
Mhm.
Anything else is it's a lot of noise, and that's where the tension comes. That's where the disrespect and the bad poor decisions and bad behavior, that all of that stems from not having the chance to really sit down and hear.
Yeah.
We're listening to respond, not necessarily to hear, to understand,
Hmm.
to take in the information that we're getting.
Yeah. I
So
mean,
go
I
ahead.
was going to say, just think about this from a work standpoint. You may not necessarily get along with everybody at work, but those people that you may not necessarily get along with, you can do one of a couple of things. You may still be in a situation where you're forced to have to interact with them, but you can react to them professionally without it resulting in a major conflict,
Mhm.
unless somebody's doing something intentionally to provoke the other. But you can still take a professional attitude with somebody and still be able to work alongside them.
Mhm.
Um, Even in the military, there were people that I had to work with and work alongside that I didn't like on a personal level,
Yeah.
but because the job was important and our job was important, we had to be able to work together. And then outside of that, we didn't have to talk to each other.
Mhm.
But if we can do that on those, why can't we do that in any other scenario?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, people will exercise what I refer to as social schizophrenia or social multiple personality disorder. They're around when they're around one group of people, their personality is this. When they're around
Mm.
another group of people, their personality is this. Why not just be the same person, be the best version of yourself, no matter what realm that you're in?
Mm-hmm.
And, and you don't have to change your personality, know, based off of who you're around. You shouldn't
Mm-hmm.
have to, you know.
And if you
Um,
do, you need to take yourself out of that group because you don't belong in it.
yeah,
It's not anywhere you have to. When you show up somewhere and you feel like you have to be very, very inauthentic, then you have no business being in that room and that space in the first place.
exactly.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about you're an author, you're a speaker.
Mhm.
Tell us a little bit about that. What's your book? Where can we find it? And what encouraged you or motivated you to, want to get up on stage and, share your knowledge and expertise to groups and groups of people.
Yeah. So the book that I wrote is called The Pillars of Powerful Parenting. Guess what your teen told me today? And they came from my days of teaching.
Love that.
And that book was actually 10 years writing that book. So
Mm.
what happened is when I started teaching and coaching, I spent some time teaching and coaching, and I would have kids that would come and talk to me, and just inadvertently found myself end up being a mentor for a lot of kids. I don't know if it's just because of my personality type or because my wife says that I have a very unapproachable look. So
Hey, hey, hey. If you're enjoying this content, do not forget to rate and review. Wherever you're listening to this podcast, be sure to rate and review. It helps us reach more people in more ways. Now, let's get back to some resilience.
I don't, I don't, she, but I think because I didn't pull punches where kids were concerned, and I would be honest with them and give them an honest opinion. They would come and talk to me and ask me for advice. And the kids that knew in my class, I would share them with them my background, and I would tell them, especially the seniors, just a few months from now, I'm going to be sitting. I was sitting where you are. I said, now imagine this: you have nowhere to go after you leave here. And you have nobody to go to when you leave here. I said, that's where I was at. And so when you kind of share that story with them, it connects with them, and it gives them a little bit different perspective of who you are.
Yeah.
And but I found myself being a mentor, and all these kids would come to me for advice, having problems with their home, relationship stuff, friendship stuff, whatever. And some of the questions that I would get would just absolutely floor me. And I would go home and I would tell my wife, I'm like, I hope our kids don't have these kinds of questions, or if they do, who are they asking them to, and what kind of advice are they getting?
Mm.
And it makes you really step back and think about your parenting. And when all this was starting, our oldest was just starting in the high school, and I was, my wife and I would just sit down and like, okay, you know, where are the problems with all these households and these scenarios? And I was able to narrow it down to 10 main areas that seemed to be a consistent issue with some of these kids that had troubled households. And even looking back at my own household, and we wanted to look at it and say, okay, how would I take this? Can we take this and apply it to our own family? What do we need to change, and what do we need to do? And the first thing that we needed to do is that we needed to change our mindset about how we were looking at our kids.
Mm-hmm.
Most parents parent reactive. They're always reacting to whatever's going on at that moment and never thinking beyond that.
Mm-hmm.
You have to parent from the standpoint of what is the end product. It's what they call backwards planning or backwards goal setting. And I don't normally, whenever I do goal setting, I kind of use the SMART goals type format when I do goal setting, when I'm looking at business or that type of stuff. But when it came to parenting, what made more sense was the backwards planning. You look at what the end goal in mind is, and then you work backwards from there of what the steps are to get there.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what we decided to do is, okay, what do our kids need to look like when they get ready to walk out this door and be considered adults? Because your role changes. You're not a parent anymore. Technically, when they walk out the door, now you're more of an advisor and a guide and those types of things. Because technically, they're adult. Whether they actually have the maturity of an adult or not, they're still considered adults, and they think they're adults.
Yeah.
and you're not always going to agree with the decisions that they make. But you got to decide if that decision is going to be the deal breaker in that relationship or not. Hopefully not. But um, so we spent 10 years putting these things into practice, and then kind of got kind of got a download and a message that I needed to go ahead and finish the book. So I finished writing the book in 10 days. When I had stopped writing it, I think I had made it through about chapter 5 or 6, and then there's 10 chapters in there, and I finished writing it in 10 days. And went through, had to get some help with the publication process and figure out how to do that. Figured out the best thing to do was self-publish. And so my book is out on Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
And then decided that on the advice of a friend, he said, you know what, you probably ought to do a workbook with that. And so I spent a month writing a workbook. So there's a workbook for it as well, a study guide that goes with it as well, that's out on Amazon, that you can find both of those. I'm in the process of writing another book as well. I'm almost finished with it. It's a book on success principles. And right now, the working title is The P's of Success, because for whatever reason, all the words that I kept coming up with the steps, ended up being P words for like, all right, we'll just go with that theme then. But that has lended itself, the book and I've had opportunities to be able to get up on stage and speak in front of people from a healthcare standpoint, because I do work with a lot of athletes. So I'm primarily working sports and working with athletes, and I'm also a certified strength and conditioning coach. So I've combined all those aspects together. And so I've gotten to travel quite a bit and speak on those topics, but I've really wanted to kind of change gears. And really what my goal is that I would like to get to a point where that's what I do full time, is just travel around and speak. And I've been able to branch out into topics on leadership, success principles. I'm getting into, because I am a veteran, I'm looking for veteran groups to get in front of and be able to talk, and be able to share my experience of how I transitioned from, being in the military to being a civilian. And in my clinical side, I've gotten to work with a lot of veterans and retired professional football players with traumatic brain injury, chronic concussion, things like that, and seeing a lot of the problems that they have come up with and how it's affecting them, affecting their relationships and those types of things. And I really want to be able to make an impact and make a change there. So, yeah.
I love it. I love it. That's admirable, to say the least, because you could keep all this information, keep it all to yourself, and no one would ever know.
Yep.
Right? No one would ever know. But I had a saying that says, knowledge is like magic. It's great to possess, but greater when it's shared.
Yes.
And I stand by that. I don't even know where those words put together, I don't even remember where they came from. Yeah. But I know I will never, ever, ever forget the sequence, because it rings true in everything that I do, everything that my guests do. You all have had such amazing journeys through life. And the one thing that separates you from everyone else is your willingness to share, right? Your willingness to jump on a call, jump on a stage, and share your life experience with other people in hopes that it makes their lives maybe just a little bit easier.
Yeah.
I would love to change the world, right? When we all, but if we can just impact one person, and their impact impacts another person, and it's just a snowball effect of positivity and intentional empathy.
Yeah.
In the world, will make it such a better place. Yeah.
I feel like I have a God-given purpose, that he's got a plan for me, and my plan at this point is to get where, I can affect people, talking to people one-on-one. You're going to make an impact that way. But John Maxwell wrote a book called 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. And one of the things that he talked about in there was the law of multiplication. If I take and I impact 10 people, and then those people go out and impact 10 people, I've affected 110 people at that point. and it continued to grow. And so, that's the standpoint that I've kind of transitioned to. I've been able to help a lot of students, been able to help a lot of interns and people along the way, just in little small groups. And I feel like that I have grown and matured enough in that transition now to where I want to start doing bigger and bigger groups of people and pushing it out wider.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I'm wishing you nothing but a success in
Thank you.
on this journey. So we know where we can get the book.
Mhm.
How can we find you on the internet and how can we support you?
Okay. So I have a website. It's drdavismcalister.com. And I always tell people 1C, 1A, 1L on my last name. Don't add extra letters. It's already long enough. So just 1C, 1A, 1L. And I've got plenty of stuff on my website. I have a media spotlight on other interviews that I've done and, spotlights that I've had on TV and radio and things like that if people want to hear other things. Um, you can also find links to my books on the website. There's also opportunities if people would like for me to be able to meet with them and kind of coach them through. We get them a copy of the book and the workbook, and I take the time to coach them through the process and help them make those transitions. Um, and the big thing that I'm looking for is I'm just looking for more speaking opportunities. I want to be able to get out and go talk to groups and be able to be an impact. There's so many different things that, I've got a coach. Everybody should have a coach, and I've got a coach. And when we sat down and she started, because I have so many different areas that I tap into, my
Mm-hmm.
resume looks more like a shotgun blast than it does because most people, when you look at their resume, there's kind of a linear, line of things that they've been consistently involved in, and it doesn't deviate too much. Mine is all over the place because I've been in, with chiropractic, I've been on the sports side, I've been a coach, and I still coach. Um, I'm a veteran, and so I have all these different areas that I like to tap into, and things that I sit down and I want to share, especially on the leadership side.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I've had some really really great leaders, and I've had some really really horrible leaders, and then I've had some variations in between. Um, and if I can help people along those lines, be able to be better leaders, because if you're a great leader, you're going to take people and you're going to develop and cultivate people that are up under you if you're doing it the right way.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and there's so many people that just don't have a clue. I've encountered a lady recently that she graduated with her MBA from a very prestigious university. And as far as management and organization, yeah, she was spot on. But when it came to people and actually leading people, she didn't have a clue.
Mm-hmm.
And she ended up running off a lot of people. And, just because she didn't know how to communicate with people, and she really didn't know what leadership was.
Yeah.
When you come into a scenario and if you're having to make the point to tell everybody that you're the boss,
That's a problem.
there's a problem.
Yeah.
And so, but I've had all these different scenarios, and I've just tried to take those things and harness them into being able to communicate that. Okay, where's the breakdown in those things? How is that a problem, and how can we fix it? And what can we do to be able to make other organizations better? Um, if we can make an impact that way, whatever direction it is, I want to be able to, I can talk on healthcare topics. I love talking on leadership and success and talking about the things that the principles that I've adopted, um, to get where I'm at. I'm at a point now where I went from being, living on the streets to now I have a wife and 5 kids, and our oldest kid is 29. He's married with 3 kids. Our second son is married. He's a fireman paramedic. Our oldest is in the service. Our youngest son is in the service. His twin sister is getting ready to go to nursing school, and we have one left at home, and she's wanting to be a veterinarian. But we've raised kids that are service minded kids. They're all going into some sort of service industry, and we've raised them with that servant leadership mentality. And when they go into scenarios, that we tell them, you're going in and you need to be the leader, use the leadership skills that you've been taught, and then serve people with it. And that's what I want to continue to do, and I want to continue to set the example for them and everybody else that that's watching me. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. Ah, you shared some gems with us today.
Thank you.
Some absolutely. Thank you for being transparent with us and showing up in your authenticity and giving us perspective, right? You know, I've never, I've met a lot of people. I've never met anyone who's gotten their bachelor's degree in 2.5 years.
No.
That feels like it should be in the Guinness World Book of Records. I don't know, but I personally feel like you should look into that because that's crazy. I just want to congratulate you in everything that you've done, everything that I know that you're going to do. You're going to do some amazing things and be able to impact so many people. There's just no limit to your potential and what you can do as long as you keep showing up every single day.
Yeah, and that's the important thing is, I've got social media. I have a Facebook page and an Instagram page and things like that. I tend not to post a whole lot on my Instagram page, but every day I put out something on Friday, each morning, just some sort of little motivational thing, whatever my thought is for the day, and those things. And sometimes it'll have kind of spiritual type component to it. Some days it's just a basic success principle. Today I was just talking about planting seeds. What are the seeds that you're planting, whether you're raising your children or if you're an employer or a manager or a boss of other people? What are you doing to plant the seeds to grow other people? And what are you doing to cultivate that and allow that to continue to grow? Because if you do, you're going to be able to sit back and you're going to be able to watch what that flourishes into and what the impact that will have.
Mm-hmm.
It's just an example of what I put out this morning. But I really wanted to try to get out and serve as many people as I can. God's always going to take care of me. He always has. I've had to work my butt off for everything that I've ever had.
Mm-hmm.
I've truly had to embrace if it's to be, it's up to me. And I haven't ever had anything just handed to me. I've always had to work for everything that I've got. But I think because I've had to do that. One, I have a greater appreciation for everything that I have, and I've tried to pass that on to my children as well. And and I think it reflects when I get up and I talk to people.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it reflects just in this conversation that we've been able to have. 100%. I have one more question before I let you go.
Okay.
Right? So, Dr. Davis McAlister, what does resilience mean to you?
The resilience is the ability to be able to overcome an obstacle. And there's components to resilience. You have resourcefulness, you have determination. But resilience is it's being able to stand in the middle of a storm and not get knocked down by the storm. You're always going to have challenges in life, and I've heard a lot of different speakers get up and say this and different formats. But life is all about problems. You're always going into a problem, you're in the middle of a problem, or coming out of a problem, and most of the time you're in all three phases at the same time in different areas of your life. And if you look at life as solving a problem, then it gives you a whole different perspective, and it gives you a better perspective. If you find yourself in one of those positions that, why do I keep going around this block? Why does the same thing keep happening to me? The answer is really, really simple. Is, if you don't learn the lesson the first time that it happened, guess what? It's going to get put in front of you again. And if you don't learn it then, guess what's going to happen? You're going to go through that again. God's going to put you through that again. And you're going to keep going around that block until you finally learned your lesson. And then you get to go to the next block. And then you're going to go around that one. And then eventually you end up with a foundation, and then these lessons that you learned here are going to contribute to this one, this block that you're going to have to go around here. And that's what our entire life is about, is the journey of learning everything we can, continue to grow, continue to mature, continue to develop and gain knowledge and wisdom and understanding. And then what do you do with that? You take it and you share it, and you try to help other people in their growth process. Hopefully you try to learn things in life. There's two ways to learn things in life. You're either, there's the easy way and the hard way. The easy way is that you listen to people that have already gone through it, and you listen to what they had to endure, and you take their advice and be able to embrace that and move on and overcome whatever obstacles in front of you. Or you can learn it the hard way. Don't listen to anybody and figure it out on your own.
Yeah.
And go ahead and bump your knees and make those mistakes and get your scars and bruises out of it. So that's kind of the so for me, resilience is about taking on those problems, taking on those obstacles, taking on those blocks, however you want to refer to it, and what do you do to get around it?
Yeah, absolutely. Resilience in action.
Mm-hmm.
It's always, I ask this question at the end of every single podcast,
Mm-hmm.
and I've gotten a million different answers. And then the one consistent is resilience is the doing. Mm-hmm. It's the actions. It's the preparation. It's the execution. Mm-hmm. It's the doing. It's more than being, it's becoming, right?
Yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Dr. Davis McAlister, thank you so much for spending some time with us and really, really, giving us some perspective and some insight on how you've navigated some obstacles and what you've done to overcome them.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Hey. Did you know I wrote a book? It's called The Value Method, 5 Steps to Unlocking Your Greatest Potential. And in it, I share just that. 5 wildly easy, actionable steps that will set you up to have a greater human experience daily. I've included interactive worksheets and small assignments at the end of each chapter. You're literally creating a living blueprint of your best life. Be sure to check out the show notes for the link to purchase your copy and a copy for a friend. Thanks for tuning into this week's episode. If you enjoyed it, be sure to rate and review. And remember, resilience in action will always lead to a greater human experience.